Oh, yeah, guy. Yeah, guy. Everybody, welcome down the line, Surf Talk Radio. Yeah, guy. Yeah, guy. What's up, bro? Sounds like some echo in this room.
A little bit of echo and the bubbling gurgles of the fish tank in the background as well.
Yeah, so we're not in the same... We're in an office at the Surfing Heritage and Culture Center, and I'm definitely noticing the echo.
Nice change of pace, though. I mean, I love this Duke stationery hanging on the wall. That's a pretty iconic piece.
Yeah, you're right. Pretty
Bunker
cool.
Spreckles, iconic Art Brewer image over there.
Yeah.
So lots of stuff in
There's
here.
always lots to look at here at the Surfing Heritage and Culture Center. My name's Scott Bass, along with David Lee Scales. This is Down the Line Surf Talk Podcast, and we are rambling on here. David, you have some follow-up from our show 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I do actually. I mentioned in the past show... Well, first of all, thanks to those who have donated to the show. We set up a donation platform via PayPal. It's on surfsplendorpodcast.com and boardroomshow.com. Is that correct? Boardroom Show?
boardroomshow.com.
And so we suggested that listeners contribute a $5 a month monthly donation, and a number of you have been. And so thank you for that, and we encourage everybody else. Obviously, $5 is kind of a minimal expense per individual, and it's not a lot for us to receive, except that when a number of people do it, it really does add up. So we appreciate that, and those are starting to add up. Also, I mentioned that I'm going to Cuba next month and reached out for any feedback from listeners or suggestions for places to visit, ways to navigate the country, all that. And I got a couple of really detailed emails from people with some really insightful feedback. So thank you for those, but also anybody else who's been, shout out. Let me know what you've enjoyed about Cuba or how to get around. I also got a comment on surfsplendorpodcast.com from Fat Aki.
Yeah, so the real guy? Or
I was going to say, isn't that kind of redundant? Can't you just be called Aki?
I don't know. I haven't seen him lately. Is he in good shape?
He looks svelte lately, dude. I'm like, he's actually not fat at all.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
That doesn't surprise me. Surfing a lot.
Yeah. Comment from Fat Aki referencing our discussion about coaches.
Right.
And you were like, look, dude, Julian Wilson, one of the top 3 guys on tour, you know, who would be his ideal coach to get him to that next level of world title status? Well, Fat Aki comments on surfsplendorpodcast.com, quote, Mick Fanning should retire and become Julian's coach for 2017. Under the brilliant tutelage, he stokes the blue-collar bastard desire that is lurking just beneath Julian's perfectly coiffed mop. Despite Julian's metrosexual teen Vogue appeal, there is a beer-swilling Chris Davidson / Eugene Fanning Australian beast that wants to win over all else. For God's sakes, he comes from a family of tile setters who worked 60 hours a week to keep him in thrusters and boardies. He owes it to them. And who better to enforce the iron, inflexible, repetitive discipline than his real older brother / soulmate, Mick Fano? For goodness sakes, did you see the tears in Julian's eyes when he described the J-Bay shark bump? He absolutely loves and worships that man. And Mick's dirty secret that won him all those world titles, the fact that behind every yoga ball single-focused heat flirts Eugene, Dr. Jekyll, waiting for the victory to be unleashed. I can't wait to see pictures of Julian wearing one shoe and soiled briefs, standing on a table, drinking Foster's mixed with vomit from the 2017 WSL Championship trophy in some back alley Gold Coast beer pit. End quote. From Fat Aki.
Fat Aki coming through with a great... are you sure that wasn't Chaz Smith?
Could have been.
Fat Aki coming through. That was great.
I mean, Fanning would be the perfect coach, but also I think... He's absolutely right.
There is
Fanning
a lot
needs to unleash that Eugene aspect of Julian Wilson.
Yeah, you know what? That all makes perfect sense, except it doesn't make sense for Mick Fanning to do that. I think Mick Fanning is going to make a run at the world title or not, you know, like we discussed.
Yeah.
Is there truth to the rumor and some of the photos and videos we've seen where Mick Fanning's busting a bunch of aerials?
So I watched that video after you told me about that.
Yeah. Not so good.
Not so good. Great by Mick Fanning standards.
Right.
So average by most people's standards,
right.
you know, or most pro standards. I love it though. And again, we always talk on this show like, hey, Scott and I are the ones with the microphones, but this conversation extends beyond us, and we want to make sure that you, the listener, gets engaged. And there's an example of a perfect platform for it on the website.
Yeah, and great email from Fat Aki, whoever you may be. Keep them coming, because there's no way David and I can't speak for David, there's no way that I could write something so creative. So good work, and appreciate it.
Fat Aki's way better than Skinny Aki, in my estimation. We got another one from Bill Rosenblatt, who's a longtime listener of yours, Scott. Has been listening to our show for the last 3 years. He says, you guys complain about cold water and flat spells? Give me a break. Today in New Jersey, it's 23 degrees with sustained winds about 20 miles an hour. Water temp is 47 or so. Flat spells here last weeks on end. I know, one would ask, why would anyone even live here, much less surf here? It's a great question. End quote.
But Bill's right now basking in the sun in Puerto Rico, probably. So, in fact, he probably wrote that email from Puerto Rico. So, whatever, Bill.
Well,
Bill's a good guy and a good fan of the show. And
so we did survive those flat spells, and we've got quite a bit of swell running.
Holy
the last
mackerel.
couple of days.
The waves have been pumping. It's pumping right now. It's rather raw and unruly and disheveled and solid and powerful. There's been, here in Southern California, if you haven't been seeing it on the news, there's been a major couple of systems that came through here. And Sunday morning, there were some all-time waves down where I live and surf. I don't know about up where your neck of the woods.
There was a secret nook or two that were all-time, but for the most part, overpowered.
Yeah.
You know.
So some good waves.
Where'd you surf? I saw your wetsuit hanging off your truck. Did you surf this
today
morning?
I have not surfed. No,
okay.
I'm waiting.
You left it out hanging on your truck so that it gets rained on right now?
Is it raining right now? It is. Huh? I was hoping it was going to dry it out. But
yeah, it's the exact opposite, unfortunately.
What are you going to do?
Anyways, do you have any follow-up from the previous episodes?
Or should we get right into it? Let's just get right into it, and I'll check my email. I've been busy.
Dude, a lot's happened since
I know.
Our last recording. Actually, the day that we recorded our last episode, we drove out of here, and the news hit that Paul Speaker stepped down from his CEO position with the WSL. I know that information's about a week and a half old now, but I think you have some new insight into it, Scott.
I do. I've got some insight. I do want to get to this quick email real quick.
Oh, okay. Sure.
My friend Ryan, who I surf with out at Cardiff and around Encinitas, said, hey, lots of fun at Cardiff this morning. This was Sunday. I didn't get a chance to take you up on your offer of an unrequited drop-in. Does it carry over to the next overhead day at Cardiff? Long-time listener, finally a subscriber, $5 a month. Really dig the show. Keep the stoke going. Adios and aloha, Ryan Pingree. And Ryan's one of the North County paddler guys and a guy I surf with a lot. So thank you, Ryan. Thanks for listening. And yes, the offer of an unrequited drop-in, which is a great word, requited.
I thought it was unrequited.
Maybe. See, I can't even pronounce it. That's perfect.
Maybe they're two separate
unrequited.
words. I've heard of like
it's REQUITED, unrequited.
Yeah. Like I've only heard it like an unrequited love, where you're like.
Either way, I can't pronounce it nor spell it, and I don't even really know what it means. But good job, Ryan. Thanks for the email. David and I appreciate your subscription, too.
Definitely. Our favorite topics of conversation on this show, other than surfing, tea, grammar, and language.
Because I butcher it all the time.
And our hairdo. Our hairdos.
Well, to segue into the whole Paul Speaker thing, as you mentioned, 2 weeks ago, the day we signed off, I got the news driving home that Paul Speaker has stepped down from the WSL. Now, Nick Carroll, who works as a surf journalist for the past 40 years or so, and a good friend and a great guy, he wrote a piece for SwellNet. And I took a little bit of what he wrote, but most of this is my own thoughts on this. And he and I kind of bantered back and forth on email about this. But Nick Carroll wrote this piece. Okay, so Paul Speaker stepping down from the WSL. That's it for Plan A. And Nick wrote, hey, was Paul Speaker pushed out of this position or did he jump? Which is an interesting question.
It's always a good question.
Yeah. So here we are, David. We're 5 years into this WSL experiment, and competitive surfing seems to be in a pretty good place. Paul Speaker, Dave leaves on a high note. You and I would agree.
Definitely.
Great broadcasts, increased pay for athletes, an attempt at a leveling of the field for women's pay, a more robust women's tour, I think you could agree.
Definitely.
The co-opt of Slater's wave pool, the purchase of the XXL Big Wave Awards, and the creation of the Big Wave World Tour. Everything is quite rosy except for the finances. And I will quote Nick Carroll's article now. Nick says, the original business plan drawn up by ZoSea Media, the Santa Monica-based sports marketing vehicle that took ownership of the ASP at the end of 2012, called for a tour that earned more than its keep. There is $1 million a pop for each CT naming rights. Lucrative tour partnerships with a range of non-endemic companies would be sold across a range of categories. Cars, electronics, cosmetics, travel and airline, beverage, and several other categories were mentioned. This would all be in sync with a range of equally impressive new broadcast deals, which would work to secure the partnerships and open more and more doors for all concerned. It was epic blue sky thinking. And for all the shiny coherence of today's CTs on the outside, for all the hard work of Paul and his many loyal staff, it clearly hasn't quite worked. Deals had to be cut immediately around the naming rights fee. Major CTs in Fiji, Rio, and Maui remain without corporate names or fees attached. A fortune has been spent on trying to lure non-endemic backers through the door with limited success. Indeed, three of the most prominent names on the WSL site, Samsung, Jeep, and Corona, aren't strictly newcomers to this space. All had prior relationships with professional surfing's events. The media platform is still essentially web broadcast, massively improved from the stumbly event-to-event ASP version for sure, but still largely preaching to the converted. So those are good words from Paul.
Yeah.
And now here we sit, David, January of 2017, and the revenues being brought in simply do not meet the forecasts. Plan A was to test pro surfing's place in the grander sports marketplace, and it has done that. And the outcome of Plan A is that surfing is small time, at least according to dollars and cents. The WSL seems to have a huge fiscal gap. I'm assuming all this, but this is based on interviews and research I've done with industry insiders, a few of whom I sat down with this past week after the Paul Speaker announcement.
Okay.
And it seems to be that there is a hemorrhaging of Dirk Ziff's money, the guy who backed ZoSea. So it was time for Speaker to leave. After 5 years, the revenues don't match up with the forecasts. Somebody has to leave. This just can't continue. There has to be some change. And the small amount of eyeballs that are watching the WSL webcast will never be enough for the WSL to court big-time umbrella sponsorships in the grand sports marketplace from corporations such as Coca-Cola, Toyota, IBM, the Royal Bank of Scotland. Any huge corporation in any huge sector can climb onto any number of better-suited content platforms. Call it Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, hell, even lacrosse. Samsung rolled the dice, more or less, relatively cheapy, and the return on investment on that deal could be great. We don't know. It could break even. We don't know. It could be not so great. We don't know. So if the amount of money going out is far greater than the amount of money coming in, why keep going? If Plan A has taken us to this place, year 5 with no fiscal return on investment, why keep going? And so that, David, brings us to Plan B. And my question to you, David Lee Scales, is who is the greatest sprinter on the planet?
Usain Bolt.
Who is the greatest swimmer on the planet?
Michael Phelps.
What do those two people have in common?
Olympic gold medals.
Correct, sir. If you went to Bulgaria and asked someone at the outdoor market somewhere in Bulgaria, what does the green jacket in golf represent? They would not know.
I was going to say, yeah.
You and I know, but in Bulgaria or Nigeria or some other third world country, not so much. You ask that same person who is the greatest swimmer, they'll tell you Michael Phelps. You ask them who is the greatest sprinter, they will tell you Usain Bolt. So plan B for surfing, in my opinion, seems to be the 2020 Olympics. Surfing in the 2020 Olympics has the potential to pull this whole WSL Dirk Ziff endeavor out of the red and into the black. At least that seems to be what Ziff is thinking, according to me. 4 more years, and he might be right. David, I'm almost through with my soliloquy.
Yeah.
Only if there are waves early in the waiting period. There's a 16-day waiting period for this event in Japan. There's going to be a huge U.S. Open type beach platform arena party set up there. NBC will cover this new sport in the Olympics only if there is something to cover early in the waiting period. But Mother Nature always sings last. If no waves show up in Japan, David, early in the waiting period, surfing in the Olympics is screwed. There is no way NBC covers live surfing during the second half of the Olympics when they have swimming, gymnastics, soccer, track and field, golf, and other guaranteed sports with huge fan bases that the sponsors will demand be in prime time. So Ziff and the WSL fans of professional surfing are already trying to forecast a swell which is 4 years away. The most important swell in the history of pro surfing is 4 years away, and we're already trying to forecast it.
Bang. I couldn't agree more, man. I don't think, no matter how good it is in Japan, I don't know that it can quite execute what you're suggesting it needs to execute, because it would have to be at Mavericks. It would have to be at Chopu. It would have to be at Pipeline in order to be that compelling of viewing. There's too much nuance.
For you and I.
Insider, yeah.
But
insider understanding.
They want the guy in Nigeria and Bulgaria to go, Kelly Slater.
No, but what I'm saying is the viewer in Bulgaria doesn't care about a guy doing 3 turns to the beach at a beach break in Japan.
Can't relate to it.
Can't relate to it.
Doesn't relate understand, to running fast.
But yeah, exactly. Doesn't know why those 3 turns are better than the next guy's 3 turns.
Agreed.
Or why a guy who does 2 turns got a bigger score than a guy who got 3 turns. There's too much nuance there. So it doesn't translate to the viewer.
But that's what Plan B is what I'm saying.
But I'm saying is in Plan B, even if the waves are pumping at that beach break in Japan, it's not compelling enough viewing, you know, to really compel a non-surfing audience. Because to be honest, it's hardly compelling enough for you and I to watch when it's at Rio or when it's at even Margaret River or somewhere not death-defying.
It is what it is.
So
it's surfing.
Yeah, so I think for Dirk Ziff or whomever to double down another $100 million for the next 4 years, hedging on that long bet, that long shot.
What else could it be? Again, I just grasped this
I like it.
Out of thin air,
I think you're right. I mean, from a much more global level, you're right. Like the Olympics are the only thing that would really elevate the sport to a world stage like that and get that type of revenue dollars from sponsors.
I mean, the other thing that Plan B could be is just a slow wind down rather than pull the whole plug and leave the whole thing really flat and on its face.
So slow wind down meaning
a
keep
slow
spending
wind down of the WSL. Spend less.
To what end, though? Either
to just as
stop the bleeding and don't.
Out of respect to the sport, just kind of go, hey, look, we don't want to just drop you on your face. We're going to slowly wind down, and by 2018, we're going to be done. And guess what? You got the Olympics coming up. That's good for you, and good luck.
Yeah.
What is Plan B? What is Ziff doing in there in Santa Monica if he's even there? Like, what is it? Does it continue to spend with no plan? That guy's too smart for that.
Of course. So there could be an alternative plan of like, we are going to continue investing in this, but we're bringing in a new CEO. We have a brand new structure that we're going to implement that's going to change the revenue model or something. It's not have no plan or keep doing the same thing.
I agree. And so Plan B is hedging on the Olympics or a slow wind down. Or what do you, the listener, think Plan B could be? What are we missing here? Is Plan B, hey, I'm coming in, I'm Dirk Ziff, I can actually sell this thing to Coca-Cola? Like I'm a step above speaker. Like I actually got so much clout that I play golf with the guy who runs Coca-Cola.
Right. And
so I'm going to make it happen.
For the listener, Dirk Ziff is stepping in as the interim CEO.
Interim only. Interesting. Okay.
Well, so it says interim. I don't know.
Did they get my resume from the last time I applied.
They're like, he applied for, what was it?
Vice President of Creative Director.
Creative Director, but he's much more qualified to run this show.
I'm still somewhat saddened that I didn't even get an email that said, hey, thanks for your resume.
Yeah,
You're not qualified, but thanks for your, to not even get that.
It's still coming, don't worry. Well, they've been busy. They've been busy trying to figure out bigger. They have bigger fish to fry. Scott.
Nothing's bigger than this ego. Believe me.
So let me ask you though, that your piece was predicated on Nick Carroll's piece. Nick Carroll gave out some facts and figures.
Yes.
$1 million endorsement deals that never.
Did you read it?
No, I didn't.
It's really good. It's on Swellnet.
But where did Nick come up with those numbers? Does he reference where those numbers came from?
Well, a lot of the numbers, of course, it's privately held companies, so it's not public domain, but people have been in the surf business long enough to know how much it costs to run a contest and to understand, the answer is they're not hard numbers, and maybe we're off base, 5 million here or 5 million on one side or the other. I don't know.
But in the surf industry,
is that the general feeling with a guy who I sat down with, who's a big time player in the industry, a big time guy, one of the top guys, is like, dude, the thing's hemorrhaging. Like it costs. This is like we know how much money it costs to fly around the world to do an event in Fiji without a sponsor. It's just pricey.
But
all of their infrastructure.
Carroll, correct me if I'm wrong. In the Nick Carroll piece, he said they were asking $1 million per event for a headline sponsor, right?
Yes.
And they weren't able to get that in Fiji and other places, so
Right.
they went sponsorless at
Right.
those, and they just covered the expenses, obviously. So.
He
I'm just wondering where that $1 million
$50 million a year, according to
is what the WSL's expense is to run the tour. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Men's and women's $50 million a year.
It's a lot of money to spend.
It's a lot.
By the way, let me just suggest. I know that Carroll doesn't reference any hard figures or hard facts or quotes from specific people. So it is all hearsay at this point. So, and most of what we do on this podcast is hearsay, and it's a small enough business to where we can kind of verify things without giving somebody a direct quote. But it's pretty common that CEOs come and go. Like in the modern world, like in the tech world at the highest levels.
3 to 5 years is normal.
Yeah, 3 to 5 years is normal. So this isn't really that far out. And it's also, we're at a time in business where, especially in the tech world, where Duolingo, Uber, these big things lose money for a decade. They lose hundreds of millions of dollars for a decade without a revenue model even in place. I mean, Uber certainly had a revenue model, but Instagram had no revenue model when it got purchased by Facebook for $1 billion with 8 employees after 18 months or something like that. Facebook bought it for $1 billion with no revenue model. So that's a huge hemorrhaging of money, but there's a plan on the back end. And I don't know if they've actually been able to see a return on that investment, but it's not uncommon.
You're right. And Nick points out sort of to your point, and I'll read again from Nick's column. He said, look, it's a fully functioning world tour. It has a big wave tour. It has an awesome women's tour. It's got a slick production facility and the best wave pool in existence. It could easily look from Ziff's angle that he now owns the sport across many facets, and it's only a matter of time before he cashes in somehow.
Yeah.
And that's, you and I are riffing here from a place of, as is the norm, ignorance. And but just, sort of taking it for what it is, it seems as if all the experts have told me that it's not doing well. I hope I'm wrong.
I know, but
I hope they're wrong.
I mean, I have to just recognize the conclusion I was coming to about Instagram and even Facebook. We all know the story, obviously, of Zuckerberg not implementing a revenue model for a very long time with Facebook and just building the viewership and the usership. So you and I are trying to apply traditional business model to what they're doing and going, hey, man, you can't just keep spending money. Whereas I think forward thinkers have figured out a new model, which is just build
get
the
eyeballs,
base, get eyeballs. We will figure that out later.
Yeah.
We have deep enough pockets to fund this longer than you guys think.
Yeah.
And don't worry, we'll make it happen.
And it's funny that you say that because so many times when I have worked for corporations, you're always going, don't just trust us. Like, we're putting out a great product. Like, and of course the MBAs on the other side in New York are going, hey, unless there's revenue attached to this, we're not funding it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I would jump in and contribute to invest in the project, but I have a feeling that
how much is the WSL worth if you sold it right now at like a 5 times multiple? Just its assets. Do they own that building in Santa Monica? That's probably worth $5 million. The land?
Idea. I have no clue, dude.
$5 million is nothing if it's $50 million a year. That means they've spent $250 million already. How much have they brought in? Let's say they brought in revenues $50 million.
I'd be surprised if so.
So they're out $200 million so far.
Yeah.
So the big question is Plan B. Like, does Plan B have a number attached to it? Like, when we get to $400 million, we're out.
I don't know.
Or the Olympics is our savior.
Yeah.
Which is what one guy seems to think. That
I like that. I like that angle.
The Olympics could be the savior, and they all look at the snowboard model
as an example.
Yeah. That snowboarding came in and it kind of blew the snowboarding culture up. Like, all the hardcore snowboarders were like, "Oh, that's lame," because what had to happen was, a governing body kind of took over.
Yeah.
And that's what has to happen.
Right.
At least surfing already has ISA and Fernando, and the governing body's sort of aligned culturally. But this also brings up the question of, in Japan in 2020, if Olympics is the savior for the WSL and for the sport of surfing on a global sports marketing level, why not the wave pool? If the wave pool exists, why not the wave pool? And I asked this question of my expert, and he said, hey, look, 2017, as you know, this year in France, they're having the first sort of test run of national teams competing against national teams. In 2018, they start qualifying for the 2020 Olympics. It's all going to be done without a wave pool. And right now, Japan is going to be wave pool-less. The people in Japan do not want a wave pool.
Yeah.
So the idea of, wave pools are going to be part of the equation that saves it, right now, it's not. And it's not as easy as just implementing it.
Of course.
How do you judge in a wave pool? How does it go down? Does one guy go at a time? Do you have to do compulsory moves? You have to get tubed, do a roundhouse cutback and an aerial before we even look at your style?
Yeah.
Like and so none of that has even been touched. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot heavier than you think, how that gets judged and who the judges are and why they're judging the way they're judging. And it's a whole nother ballgame.
However the solution comes to be, or however it gets programmed, is yet to be determined. But I can't help but feel like we are all underestimating the potential appeal that surfing has to the greater masses. And I think snowboarding's
you just argued against it, though.
I
did.
Said
nobody understands the nuance of the podcast, and it's hard
Totally.
enough for us to watch it, let alone my grandmother in Iowa.
Hey, I am a complex human being, Scott, and I have opposing views in my own head that I can't reconcile. And that's what this podcast is for us to tease
we call
them
that
apart.
Hypocrite.
Call that bipolar disorder.
Okay.
No. So, but I do think both things. And I think that, people, if you bought property on the coast in the 40s, you thought that you overpaid for it. And now you're looking like a hero. Nobody could have estimated how much things will increase, how much demand would be on the real estate, how many people would be interested in snowboarding in that example, how many people would be using Facebook within a decade time, less than a decade's time since it was created. So I have a feeling like we are small-minded, and we have no idea what things can become. And so
I put that on my resume. Small-minded, no idea really what to expect. No wonder I haven't got a call back.
Savvy. Good thinking.
I agree with you. You make a great point. And I will say this, too, is that the Olympics, of course, have as much to do with the person and the story behind the person as they do the actual, 30 seconds that he competes in his event.
Always.
So if there's a compelling story, if it's John Florence or it's a guy like Adriano from the depths of the Brazilian slum to world champion, if there's in 2020, if there's, Kanoa Igarashi could be a story that's molded magnificently.
Yeah.
Who's the really great story out there that NBC goes, okay, this is our great American hope. This is the guy we're going to build our broadcast around. If the waves come, Kanoa's the guy that we're going to build a story around? Or is it Kolohe? Or, frankly, let's think internationally, who is that guy? Is it John? Is it Gabe Medina?
Hey, good news. There's a ton of great stories. We have an endless supply in surfing. Surfers are fascinating figures.
And the greatest story of the Olympics is how are they going to deal with Hawaii as a nation state?
Right.
That's the one that's fascinating. And it was brought up. Did you watch the Surfline Red Bull TV? I think I sent you a text, right? I'm like, dude, you got to watch this. It's insane.
Yeah.
Mason Ho's on the microphone. Chris Cote did a great job. 4 hours of just solid broadcasting with nary a break.
Yeah.
That's a hard job to do. And there was another guy, the guy from Surfing Magazine.
I'll
Brad
look it up.
or Brian?
I'll figure it out in a minute. By the way, somebody sent me a text saying he sounded like my voice doppelganger.
I don't know what doppelganger means. What is that?
It means look-alike, like a German. It's a German word. It's used for look-alike, but he said
he did a great job.
Bo
Whoever he was.
Flimister.
Yeah, Bo. He did a great job. He does have a good voice. And I'm not saying that you do either. But my point is that at some point during that broadcast of Live Pipeline, Todd Richards, the Olympic snowboarder, came on, and he was really good. And he brought up the issue of the Hawaiian sovereignty and the Hawaiian nation state as a surfing nation in the Olympics, and that has to be resolved. That's one of the issues that simply...
Do they compete as USA competitors, or do you separate them?
Once the Olympics says that Hawaii can be its own nation state, you realize what you've done for every sport.
Yeah.
Every sport can now go, oh, well, the Iroquois nation is going to compete in soccer, even though they all are American citizens, U.S. citizens. So I don't think the Olympics, the IOC wants to, that's a very slippery slope.
Totally.
But Todd Richards is going to be at the boardroom. He's going to be one of the commentators during the Olympics. We're doing a seminar discussion on the Olympics and it's what it means to surfing.
Yeah.
And Todd will be there as one of the speakers.
Yeah, I've always liked Todd when he fills in during surf
He's great, and he does the Olympic snowboarding.
Yeah, exactly. For NBC, right?
He's a smart guy, yeah.
Just a side note, with the Paul Speaker stepping down thing, did you have some inside gossip about Speaker or why he stepped down, other than what we just said?
Just what I told you, that, look, the numbers don't match up after 5 years, and revenues aren't where they're supposed to be. And he did do a lot of good things, but at the end of the day, if you're an MBA looking at your CEO, you're going, dude, show me the money.
Yeah.
Like, where's the ROI? He did a lot of good things, but the biggest thing that he had to do, which was get this thing at least to break even after 5 years, apparently he didn't do according to you and mine and others' best estimation of where the fiscal situation is.
Well, interesting kind of segue, talking about surfing as an industry struggling. Yesterday, the news broke that Surfing Magazine is no longer going to be printing issues. They're going to transition to a strictly online publication.
How did you feel about that? What was your internal...
My first thought was, didn't that already happen? Like, are they still printing that magazine? I haven't been looking at it.
Oh, my God, really?
No. Well, it was partially that because this was rumored a year ago. You know what I mean? Like, we've been talking about this for a long time.
It has been in the rumor.
And also, I mean, realistically, I haven't been subscribed to either any magazine for a long time.
Exactly. Nobody is.
But I do absolutely follow it on Instagram, and I do absolutely click on their links on Facebook and watch the videos that they post. So I'm still watching their content, but everything that I watch of theirs is digitally produced. I'm not actually thumbing through the magazine. So I wasn't surprised.
I think they're going to still exist in that capacity. I don't really know. I didn't read any press releases about it. Or anything.
They are.
Yeah,
they are.
Okay,
it's going straight digital.
Yeah.
So what was your thought on it when you saw the news?
Well, initially you're bummed out because people are losing their jobs. I thought. Maybe they're not. I don't know.
No, they are, actually. They've been losing their jobs over the course of the last year.
And that's a bummer. That's always a sad thing. Luckily those guys are mostly young and they're gonna be okay. I mean, I hate to sound sort of trite or cliche about it, but I think they'll all get back on their feet. But there's some very talented guys over there, not the least of which is their photo editor, Pete Taras. Is it Taras or Terrace? Terrace.
Yeah, let me ask you about that, actually. You say they're young, they're going to get back on their feet. Pete listens to this show. I've met Pete and hung out with him a couple of times. I'm a big fan of his work, aside from the fact that he listens to this show. But where does Pete go? Where do guys like that go in this modern market? Where do surf journalists make a living? I'm not sure that they do. Where do photographers make a living? How?
Yeah. You know what? That's a great question. And I wonder if there's other industries that can kind of give us the answer to that.
I think a great example is somebody like Chris Burkhardt, Morgan Mawson. Where
those guys are busting their ass just to pull it off. I mean,
no. Those guys have pivoted hard.
Oh, really?
They got their feet wet in the surf industry and then transitioned into
all outdoors, everything.
Burkhardt's a great outdoor guy, but even product photography. They're getting into product photography. And I remember Morgan Mawson shot a cover of Surfer Mag that Apple wanted to use in an iPad ad, where they're like, hey, we love that shot. We'd love to have that. So they hired him to shoot the Apple iPad. And he made more money off that one day shooting an Apple iPad than he probably would have off of 6 months shooting surf photography. And the surf photography isn't guaranteed, whereas you go do this product shoot at a staged studio, it's all guaranteed. You know what I mean? So those guys, they get a talent agent, a manager, who then just gets them work. And these fashion photographers and product or fashion companies and product companies, they're like, we love surfing. We would love to have that guy's name attached to our product because it's glamorous.
There is some cool that they bring along.
There.
Yeah.
So I would love to see Pete Terrace pivot, get some management representation, and still dabble in surf photography or shoot surfing as a passion, but also just make a killing doing product photography. You know?
Well, yeah. I hope he and the rest of them do pull it off. Now, to answer your question, what was my thought? Here's what's interesting. I worked at Surfer Magazine from 98 to like 08, 2007 or 2008. When I worked at Surfer Magazine, we hated Surfing Magazine, and Surfing Magazine hated us. There was a time on the North Shore when Surfing Magazine, I think they sent us a box of donuts, a dozen donuts, and they had wiped their asses with each donut, and they delivered donuts in a sign of good faith, like, hey, stoked you guys are here, heard you arrived safe, here's some donuts, And I think it might have been Steve Zeldin or I forget who was behind it. Maybe it was Michael Marks, or maybe it was Larry Moore. It might have been, Flame. There was a crew of guys. There's the infamous donut story.
I remember hearing this. Let me finish that story. Isn't it true that you guys ate the donuts and then later received photographs of them wiping their butt?
There's some truth to this. Yes, I was privy to this story before. I wasn't there. This happened in like 97 or 96, just a few years before.
But the big reveal was receiving the photographs going, oh,
yes,
no.
Exactly. Like somebody like Ben Marcus ate a bunch of donuts or something. I don't remember.
He's currently on the couch, like sleeping it off when the photographs show up.
Yeah. And so point is that there was a real feud. Yeah. There was a real hate between surfer and surfing. And I've always sort of carried that because I guess I'm immature or whatever, but I've always kind of went, surfing, because they were the enemy, Yeah. And even when I worked there when we purchased Surfing Magazine, and then they were under the fold of, the big corporate mega corporation that owned us, and there was still this like, we can't be in the same building with those guys. So when I saw Surfing Magazine closed, my second thought was good riddance, because that's the enemy. Kind of like my team is Surfer, and that, now again, that's obviously quite immature, but if you want my honest, immature first feelings, I was like, oh, good. And then I realized, God, that's immature. And here we are, still immature.
So I read a piece.
But there was a major feud for years.
I read a piece by Michael Chiaramella, who apparently worked as an intern for surfing and then was on staff as a salaried employee with surfing as a writer. And he's now writing some pieces on Beach Grit. And so he talked about surfing really lovingly and said it was a great experience, and I long wanted to work there, and then I finally did, and I had a great experience, worked with great people. And then said, quote, I should preface this criticism by mentioning that I joined the team in a very precarious moment wherein producing a fluid stream of income took precedence over all else. It seemed to me that we sacrificed certain production quality and moral standards in order to grow our numbers and become, in the eyes of the enthusiast network, not a liability. End quote. By the way, the enthusiast network is the corporation that owned the magazine.
Yeah, or it's a subsidiary of a larger corporation. That's all quite confusing.
That owns Surfer and Canoe and biking and all
climbing
these,
and powder and a bunch of other stuff, like probably a whole nother segment of like guns and whiskey. I don't even know what they are.
Sure.
A bunch of other magazines.
So back to Michael's quote. This led to atrocious practices like a wetsuit field test with only positive reviews. Can't upset the brands that buy into your projects, and social media schemes that were intended to drive traffic through any means necessary, like following people so they'd follow us back and then subsequently unfollowing them. End quote. So,
well, look, this is the biggest picture, the big reveal about all these magazines and Surfline, and is that they're all marketing vehicles for the surf industry. Like,
shocker.
As soon as you think, and quite frankly, for a long time, I thought there was a separation between editorial and advertising. But in the big picture of things, they're just trying to drive the industry, these magazines and these websites. Mm-hmm. And so there's not going to be any editorial integrity. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone understands it. That's an MBA and that's, had some business savvy. It's like, that's what we do. We're here to support the industry. Why would we write a negative review about a wetsuit?
Totally. And I've understood that implicitly, if nothing else, since I was pretty young, but I was also okay with it because I knew the company that was placing the ad, Quicksilver, was started by Bob McKnight and Jeff Hackman, and I was like, dude, I like that guy. I've seen him surf, and I want to support him. And he made those board shorts so that he could go surf Sunset with them. And that's radical. I'm okay with that.
Pre-multinational corporation owning the surf industry.
Pre that,
right?
But also then in later generations, Dane Reynolds and his affiliation with the brand, and I want to support that up until we discussed Chapter 11, and it all falls apart. But now, when Quicksilver grows too big for its britches, I don't know, Ruka steps in and does something rad on a small level, or Rourke Revival, or whoever the next thing is, and I want to support that, Or to be perfectly honest, Beach Grit shows up, and they're writing articles that fascinate me, and then they introduce a board short on their website, and I'm happy to throw them $50 for that board short,
Yeah. Does Beach Grit have board short advertising?
Dude, they're terrible. What
are they?
I bought the $50 board shorts.
What are they?
The inseam is shorter than my boxers.
Who makes them? They're called Beach Grit?
Beach Grit. They're Beach Grit labeled board shorts. And they hired a designer, like some fancy designer. They're so short though, dude. Literally, I wear
short shorts. Chaz must have designed them.
I wear boxer briefs.
Yeah.
They're longer than Beach Grit's board shorts.
Oh, wow.
But my point is, I was happy to throw them the $50 to support them.
Yeah.
And when they showed up, I'm like, well, I'm not going to be able to wear these, but guess what? I'm happy that
some homeless man will.
I'm happy that Derek and Chaz got my $50 because I want to support them. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So
that's it's a sad day, I guess, but not really. Another thing about the surfing magazine thing is, my friend pointed this out to me, and it's why he absolutely hates surfing culture. In his mind, it doesn't even exist. And it's because we have so much self-importance. We think we're so fucking important.
Agree.
We think we're so, oh my God, a sad day. Surfing magazine shuttered its doors. Who cares? Like, in the big picture, like, we're not that important. And there's so much ego and self, like, it's just bullshit.
I'm also not, I hate the hand wringers who are just like, yeah, but where are the jobs going to go? What are they going to do? People are going to get fired. My thought is, look, you constantly throughout life have to navigate and negotiate, and you need to figure out what your skill sets are and apply those to this new world that we're living in. There's never been a better time to be a pioneer. There's never been a time to be an artist and a creator. Like, I read this Seth Godin book, the marketing dude.
Yeah.
A while back, where he's like, dude, If you just went to college to learn a trade thinking that those jobs are going to be available to you, you're an idiot.
Yep.
Those companies are no longer there giving out those jobs. And by the way, even if they are, that job doesn't pay as much as it used to, and it doesn't pay enough to pay back your student loans. If you thought that it was going to, again, you're an idiot. Secondly, they're not going to pay you for 50 years and have a retirement package waiting for you like they were for your dad's generation. And they're not going to give you promotions throughout those 50 years to increase with your cost of living, because they're just going to replace you with a guy who just got out of college who's desperate to work for $30,000 a year.
Yep.
And they're probably not even going to do that. They're just going to outsource your job to India, to China for $8,000 a year.
Yep.
Or replace it with a robot who's going to do it for essentially a one-time investment of $10,000. So you're an idiot if you think that that trade is replicable. It is replicable, but it's going to get outsourced. Now, here's what is irreplicable in Seth Godin's eyes. Here's what are job qualities that will exist in the future. Leadership skills and creative ability to creatively solve problems. If you can creatively solve problems and you have leadership skills, that will make you irreplaceable. That'll make you valuable. So companies that used to have 50 employees that were making $40,000 a year are now going to have 8 employees that are making $100,000 a year. And those people are going to be programmers, and they're going to be creative problem solvers. That's what you want to foster.
Seth also has one of the greatest quotes ever. I think it's Seth. He's a brilliant guy. And I don't know if you follow his, he's got his Twitter account. But anyway, he says that as soon as you get a job, the most important thing that you do at your next job, at your new job, is be looking for your next job. That's your number one responsibility, is to be looking for your next job. And the reason he says that is because your employer is looking for your replacement.
Always.
And I think that's true.
I think it is true. And I think it should be noted that your next job could be within the same company. It's not that you're looking to undermine the company you work for. Your next job should be your boss's job, actually. You know?
We're filled with so much insight.
This has been an inspirational podcast, Scott.
I feel
What are we even talking? Are we still talking about surfing?
Who's the guy that I feel like? What's one of those?
Tony Robbins.
Yes, thank you.
So I think this segment is dedicated to the Pete Terraces at Surfing Mag who maybe are looking. I don't know. Maybe he already has a job. I don't know. But look, guys, there's never been a better time. Let this be a time of inspiration to create more than you've ever created. Now you have more platforms now to showcase your art and embrace it. Find the revenue model, but embrace the creation. It doesn't mean
it's not scary for those guys.
Dude,
it's scary for
completely.
all of us.
I don't underestimate that, and I don't not sympathize. I've been in that position.
Yeah.
But embrace it and create.
There's a job at the WSL.
We kind of brushed past the Red Bull pipeline This Is Live thing.
Yeah.
That's a great example of a company pivoting and embracing new technology. You and I have long complained about great days at Pipeline or other places around the world that the contest doesn't run in, and then the Pipe Masters comes and it's during 2 weeks where there isn't great swell and they have to figure out how to package it into something interesting. Red Bull's figured out a scenario where they execute on the best day of the year, put up a couple cameras, stream it live, get Chris Cote over there in short notice, and have him just narrate what's happening. And then we didn't know that was going to... The day before that happened, did you know Red Bull was going to do that?
I did not. No, it kind
Nor
of
did I.
Came up on the radar.
It happens live. Instagram disperses it out to the world and says, hey, man, go over to Red Bull TV and watch this thing stream live.
And I saw it on Surfline, and guess what I did? I emailed you. I sent you a text. Said, dude, you guess what's going on right now?
Yeah.
And there's a million guys like me doing that to guys like you, and you probably sent it to somebody.
Absolutely. And a number of people sent it to me in addition to you.
Because it was friggin' insane.
And
it was so good. It was pumping the whole, it was nonstop action. It wasn't like there was lulls or anything.
No, and sometimes we'll see a post-produced package of the best waves and the best wipeouts. But for me, what's most interesting is watching guys take off on the middle waves and make them or not make them and try to figure out which waves are the good waves. Watching sets roll through and clear out the lineup. Like
on top of that, getting insight from the guys that are the head guys in the, like the Jamie O'Briens and the Mason Hoes, just picking up little insights from them, just some of the things that they might have said, like, not necessarily like loud and proud, but you could just tell that I felt like I learned something about the lineup, about the people, about which guy's place, where he belonged in the lineup, about how much respect some guys had for others. We saw Michael Ho get insane waves out there at 60 years old and just super inspiring. And Derek Ho. And, I know now that Jamie Sterling rides this 9-foot gun and sits and rolls in on the second reefers. And that's his spot, and you just pick up different. And then you're right. You saw guys that are cutting their teeth that they didn't even say their names, that in 6 years, if they continue to cut their teeth, they're going to probably have a little bit of a spot in the lineup.
And seeing it unedited also gives you an understanding for where waves break on the reef and the different styles of waves and where they break at different parts in the reef that I didn't really have before, and that you don't get during the Pipe Masters, where there's only 2 guys waiting for the best waves in the lineup. In this scenario, you're watching guys take off on C quality waves and D quality waves because the pecking order gets the guys at the top of the pecking order get the set waves and the good waves. So it gave me a much better appreciation and understanding for the spot that I don't really get through a lot of the other broadcasts. I think it was a great event, great thing to see. I hope that we see more of it in the future. Another thing that happened was the backdoor shootout. Prior to that event, the backdoor shootout ran for a couple of days, and they ran in really, really good waves. So that was exciting to watch and see top performers.
Yeah, no, the backdoor shootout was great. Of course, Koa Rothman got that insane, super deep, probably as deep. I mean, who am I to argue against the guys that live there and surf there? But that was just mind-blowingly deep.
It was a closeout.
And it reminded me of Derek Ho. Derek Ho, I think it was 94 or 91. One of those years, maybe it was 89. I don't know. Derek Ho got this insane, during the contest, I think it was the semifinals, he got that just mental deep where you literally turned away and went and had given up on him, and he came out. Yeah. And this is the way that Koa's was.
Koa, not to jump ahead, but Koa is my Duke for that one wave.
Yeah. Well, you just jumped ahead.
I did.
You said you wouldn't. Right.
You brought him up. I'm gonna crown him as the Duke. Like, it was a closeout. He takes off on this thing, one giant pump off the bottom into a closeout, and somehow gets spat out the end. It defies physics. Like, you look at it and you go, from where I saw him enter the barrel and where I saw him exit and the amount of time in between, there's no way he could have gone that
Something
fast.
happened in there that we don't know about.
It's Timothy Leary stuff, dude.
Yes.
It's
somehow he got pulled, like he was attached to some sort of ethereal strings and pulled out of the wave.
Quantum physics, there's no way he transversed time, the time-space continuum, and got blown out mind-blowing.
Somebody on Surfer Magazine forums wants to make note that it's no coincidence that Trump takes office and Surfing Magazine jobs are lost.
Agreed. Definitely.
Thanks, Trump. That's trumped up.
So one other thing that happened during that run of Pipeline is that Kalani Chapman nearly died.
Yes.
Did you see this footage?
Sad. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
It's insane that nowadays we get all this stuff on camera. It's really heartening to watch. Competitors, so there's footage of the wave itself, and it
didn't look all that like a big deal, did it?
It didn't. It's not the craziest wave we've seen this year, but it was kind of in the worst. He ate it in the worst place of that wave for sure. By the way, Kalani Chapman, longtime pipe charger. I've surfed with him in the North Shore, not at pipe, but the dude's gnarly. And he surfs pipe all the time. Like, if this can happen to Kalani Chapman, it can definitely happen to anybody.
Oh, yeah. No, he's completely legit and just taken down Slater a few times.
And he's won the Wave of the Winter at Pipeline.
Oh, yeah.
So what happened was...
nephew of Al Chapman.
Yeah. And stepbrother to Sean Briley.
Right.
So, gnarly dude, and took off on this wave basically ate it when the thing was doubling up and got sucked over the falls and slammed against the reef. And competitors, this was during the backdoor shootout, by the way, the Dahui event. Competitors Seth Moniz and Nathan Florence saw Kalani's tombstoning board. And Kalani was nowhere to be found, but the reality was he was underneath the water pulling on his leg was attached to the leash, and that's why the board was tombstoning. So they saw that. They scrambled over to him, pulled him to the surface via his leash, and Kalani was unconscious. So the surf patrol comes over, and they're able to get him onto the surf patrol's sled, take him to the beach, and the Hawaiian Water Patrol administered CPR and successfully revived him on the beach. Looks like Kalani's going to make a full recovery, but a very harrowing and scary, scary moment to see the video of the wipeout, the tombstoning board, everybody scrambling, getting him on the sled while waves are crashing, getting him into the beach, the crowd of the Hawaiian Water Patrol doing the CPR. Really, really scary couple of minutes. And again, thankfully, he will make a full recovery.
Wow. I'm glad he's going to be doing better.
Yeah, I'll have that footage on surfsplendorpodcast.com, of course.
Well, you mentioned Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg apparently has upset a lot of people in Hawaii. I'm just now catching up to the story. I don't know if you have some insight on it.
You know, I do. He's actually my kook of the week.
He bought some land on Kauai, 700-acre property, fell in love with the community and the cloudy green mountains, according to him. And he wants to plant roots and join the community ourselves. And Zuckerberg's lawyers have now filed lawsuits against hundreds of Hawaiians who may own an interest in small parcels within the boundaries of Zuckerberg's estate. The quiet title suits, first reported by the Honolulu Star-Advertiser, are used to clarify the often complicated history of land ownership in Hawaii and can result in owners being forced to sell their land at auction. In some cases, defendants are even required to pay the legal fees for the plaintiff, in this case, the world's fifth richest man, Zuckerberg. So the Hawaiians in Kauai that are upset about this are calling Zuckerberg the face of neocolonialism. And for Native Hawaiians, it's definitely a slap in the face. And I'm reading through this here.
Yeah, tale as old as time in Hawaii, right? I mean, people coming in and booting the local people. There is a long storied history of this, and there's also a storied history of the government screwing the local people. Yeah. The government getting in bed with big moneyed interests and corporate interests and taking payoffs. I don't know that it's really that black and white, to be honest, and I don't understand the nuance of it well enough to really comment. And so maybe I shouldn't be calling Zuckerberg the kook of the week. However, I don't know. It's kind of easy to do, and there seems to be some substance to it. I will read one commenter's comment from Beach Grit. There was an article written on Beach Grit by one of our listeners, Adam Jara, who's sent us a number of emails and comments. And the title of that article is Imperialism, the Zuck versus Kauai. And he does kind of shame Zuckerberg in this piece, but the comment is what I want to read. This comment was left by Velob Woy. He says, quote, "So, Zuckerberg's land is not owned by locals. He owns a large swath of land that he bought from the Jimmy Fugler / Mary Lucas estate. Within that swath are the Kulanis." I'm probably mispronouncing that. Think half-acre spots of various land in the swath that have, for the most part, been in the people's hands for generations. Access to these Kulanis is across Zuckerberg's land, hence his desire for privacy. I don't know if all these Kulanis have utility easements. Carlos Andrade, I'm totally going to mispronounce everybody's names. Andrade?
Carlos Andrade.
Andrade?
Yeah.
He's a heavy Honolulu local, is the professor who's assisting Zuckerberg. As with most such issues, the reality is not quite so black and white as the above hot take makes it out. Obviously, the seeming coercive aspects of Zuckerberg's action is the most reprehensible. If he offers the owners well above market value and they take him up on it, that's one thing. If someone is forced to sell because they can't afford an attorney, that is bullying. And it's a human rights infraction that shouldn't be tolerated by the community. Anyone vilifying Zuckerberg's need to include members of Kauai's county government and planning commission over the last 60 years, whose plantation/mafioso mentality made possible the current zoning and land use fiasco that is Kauai. So,
well, it looks, what I'm reading here too, and I'm just getting caught up on this, is that Zuckerberg feels as if he's doing the right thing by trying to pay fair market value to descendants that may or may not lay claim to this land. He's like, look, how much do you want? And I guess on the other side of that, this land was slated for like a 90 home development.
Yeah.
And certainly Zuckerberg owning this land and keeping it open, although probably not the perfect situation for some, is better than a 90 home development, I would think. But again, yeah. I'm naive to exactly all the ins and outs of this. It looks quite complicated.
It's worth mentioning on this show, but it is much more complicated than you and I, and we really don't have any skin in the game either. So I have a feeling that even if we shamed Zuckerberg as the kook, it's still not to a large enough degree that the people of Kauai would want it to be. I'm sure they feel very adamantly about this,
Yeah.
But at the same time, man, I don't know. If you buy property, you want privacy on that property,
Yeah, you own it, you own it. If you don't, you don't. Let's figure out how that works.
Yeah, I don't know. There's an article that was written on Playboy.com that's actually really interesting and well written about how crystal meth almost killed big wave surfing. Did you see this?
No.
I read the reference to it on Beach Grit, but it's really well written, dude, and it's really insightful. It's about Vince Collier's Santa Cruz, we've
90s, 1997.
Yeah. We've talked about that story before, but Vince Collier coming up in Santa Cruz, and then dealing with this character named Jeff Ayers, who is drug running, and fascinating figures that are super scary. And then Anthony Rufo's drug use and how that affected his surfing career, Fleas, all these people who we've all talked about, who we all knows kind of their stories, but it was written about in a really raw way and told some really, really scary stories. So I'm going to have a link to that on surfsplendorpodcast.com with some excerpts, and you should read the full piece on playboy.com. I only know I've never subscribed to Playboy. I've never spent any time on their website. I'm well aware of their publication, of course, but I've never really read any of their stuff. This was really good, and it had nothing to do with boobies at all. It was just about surfing, and it was really well written. So check that out, How Crystal Meth Almost Killed Big Wave Surfing.
All right, check that out.
I know we have a hard out because we've got another meeting that's taking place here. Do you want to wrap up with Dukes and Kooks and Must-See Moments? I gave you my Duke, Koa Rothman, my kook, Mark Zuckerberg. My must-see moment came from the comments section on surfsplendorpodcast.com from Griffin, who said, hey, have you guys seen the weak rap videos from Surfing Life? They are tragically underviewed. Are you familiar with these weak rap videos?
No. I don't think I am.
They're actually really good, dude. They're basically weak rap. It's a joke. WEAK. But it is a weekly wrap-up. It's in reference to doing a week turn in surfing, the week wrap. Anyways, this guy, one of their staff members, does these 3-minute-long end-of-the-week reviews for Surfing. Did I say Surfing Life?
I think so,
yeah. Surfing Life. They're hilarious. It's a dude. Basically, it's like the SNL, news wrap kind of thing. And he's just commenting on who did the coolest turn or who produced the best video or what magazine did a crappy article, or just, it's all comedic, but they are very, very good. And I have watched them over the course of the last year, and I watch them, I giggle, and then I move on and I close the window and I don't think twice about it. But Griffin on surfsplendorpodcast.com, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Yeah. We will rewatch and direct people. They get about 3,000 views. I'll actually just give you a quick quick insight right here with his review
strategic business move in 2006
of What Youth.
What Youth? Because they're starting to put the next generation of younger guys in their videos. If they didn't do it, the original pack of guys would have started to become old, and their name would have actually become literal. They would have had to start putting a question mark at the end of their logo, and then started pronouncing it with an upward inflection. What youth? What? Youth? What youth? Youth? What? Best hit of the...
That might not have translated, but what he's referencing is What Youth. Bravo for them for pivoting and having young guys in their videos, because for the last couple of years, they've had Dion Agius and Dane Reynolds and guys who are in their mid to late 20s for a publication that's called What Youth. So, What Youth... anyway, week wrap videos. My must-see moment.
All right. Well, you can check all this stuff out on boardroomshow.com or surfsplendorpodcast.com. And again, thank you so much for your subscriptions and donations, and keep them coming. And you can reach Scott at surftalksandiego@gmail.com and David at
hello at surfsplendorpodcast.com. And then, of course, Instagram's a great way to get instant access, and that is at surfsplendor.
Oh, and we want to know, David and I are thinking about putting together a surf trip with listeners.
Oh, yeah.
So if that's something that you guys are into, if you're interested in joining us somewhere, maybe Central America, maybe Mexico.
We're talking about Morocco's kind of the ideal location, but it would have to take place during this time of year. So maybe we plan that for next year, and try to squeeze in a trip between.
Yeah, something
now and then
in the summertime of this year. A surf trip with David and Scott, and we've never even surfed together. So this will be, if you come with us on a surf trip, it'll be the first time that you not only have seen David and Scott, but the first time Scott and David have seen Scott and David surf.
But here's where this idea comes from, real quickly. A friend actually sent me the idea, but we want to foster community. Like, this is community, and it's kind of an online community, but the comment section on Beach Grit's a community that we really enjoy. Our comment section on the website's great. People email us. People interact on Instagram. Why not just do a surf trip together? And we could tell everybody, hey, come surf our local spot with us, but our listenership is worldwide. So let's pick a destination spot. Let's do a week-long trip, and we all hang out.
Yeah. We're
all of like-minded ilk.
Yeah.
Right?
Costa Rica, Nicaragua, El Salvador, something like that.
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right.
So we're just trying to gauge interest with this.
Yeah.
Send us.
If you want to join us, let us know.
Let us know, and then we'll figure out the numbers, the location, the dates, and all that.
Yeah. Probably be like 6 guys. Matt.
I was thinking 10.
Something like that.
I think we'd have interest of 30. So we're going to have to, figure it out. But
you're going to have to be right.
I was going to say, I don't want to go surf with 30 other dudes, but
no, hell no.
But we'll figure it out.
All right. Well, until next time then, adios and aloha.